What's up, everyone?
What's happening, Jason?
Got a few people starting to join in already.
It's two Jasons.
Gotta be careful with that Jason. Yes, Jason and Jason. Sorry.
We're gonna talk. Is it okay to refer to you as Dr. J?
That's perfect.
That's perfect.
Dr. J.
Right. Awesome. Well, we still got some people piling in here. We'll give it just a second. Let them catch up. I'm getting a thumbs up.
How you been doing, Chad?
I'm doing awesome. I had a great day yesterday. I got my 12th win out of 15 events that I've shot locally since November 2nd. And I won in a shoot off against actually a girl. So girls are making it to the top, you guys. So we tied out. It was Grace Cho. She's a pro squad member, and we ended up having a shoot off, and I was able to get her at the end. So it was pretty good.
Awesome.
Good deal.
Well, hey everyone, let's go ahead and get started. Of course, Mr. Sean Alley, welcome back, my friend. Sean, if I didn't hear it once, I heard it 100 times this weekend. Everybody's praying for your wife and hope she's doing good. You don't have any updates for us yet, do you?
No, we meet with the neurosurgeon actually tomorrow, so we'll see what's going on and see what the plan is moving forward. So
awesome. Special guest of the hour, Dr. Jason Richardson. Dr. J, welcome. Appreciate you joining us. Everybody's probably wondering why a doctor is on this podcast, but Dr. Jason is a multi-time world BMX champion, Pan Am gold medalist, and he's also a sports psychiatrist. So, and Dr. J, you kind of help athletes kind of navigate through sponsorship from time to time, and we thought you would be very valid to be on here, and we appreciate you joining us.
Yeah. Real quick, I'm a psychologist, not psychiatrist.
Psychologist, sorry.
Yeah, psychologist. And I only won one world championship. So, anyways, so thanks for.
I know we'll get in trouble for that in our world. They'll
Yeah. So I just want to be fair to the people. Yeah, I won one in 1994, elite cruiser, and I won a Pan Am Games gold in 2007, and a lot of near misses as far as world championship main events. But, so I became a psychologist to work with athletes, and then because I live the life, I help them sometimes navigate the world of being a professional athlete as well.
Awesome. Yeah, of course, you all know RAD Chad Roberts. Chad, welcome back, buddy.
Hey guys, I'm stoked to be here. So I hope all you guys are ready to talk about this is kind of like talking about lead right now, isn't it? Can't talk about lead, but RC in your gun barrel. But sponsorship has kind of seems like it's grown some legs lately over the last couple of years, or since I've been involved for sure, about how it works. So it's funny going back to an old story with Jason. I remember when we were racing the last year in 2007 together full time, and he was coming to me and he was going to school at the time, but he wanted to let the cat out of the bag, and he's like, look, I got to figure out something to do after I get out. I'm like, well, come work in the industry like I did, at Shimano. Yeah. And he's like, no, I got to do something different. And then he became a psychologist, a sports psychologist. And he threw that down at me at a Starbucks we were actually in Arizona, I believe, at a race. And you almost won that weekend, or did you win that weekend, Jay?
I'm good in Arizona, but I didn't win. Yeah.
You didn't win. But we did really good as a team. I mean, we smoked everybody. And I won one of my races. So it was cool. I was an elite master or of what we call a vet pro back then, towards the end of my career. So it was really cool. But yeah, it was cool to see somebody that I grew up, first off, idolizing, second off, becoming a teammate, and then third, watching him transition from being, arguably one of the best racers in the world, but also being able to navigate, sponsorship and being one of the guys that was like our voice for the pros and everybody that we had to, just what the sanctions were going through and the infancy of BMX. A lot of people making a lot of money, and and then there was a lot of people not making any money. So he was always the proponent of trying to get bigger purses and sticking together as a group. And it was cool to watch him transition through all those years.
Well, Dr. J, if you would kind of talk about that for a second, just in
Yeah.
general, having a sponsorship is sometimes everything it's cracked up to be and more, and sometimes it's not. And it can both add pressure. It could be a slippery slope with sponsorships, right?
Yeah. Well, it depends. Yeah, it can be. And it also depends on the person being sponsored. And I don't mean that are they worthy of being sponsored out, but just really what kind of person they are. Sometimes, you get people who are people pleasers, you get some people who are conflict avoidant, you get some people who they want the ball at the last second of the game. So it just depends on who that person is. It's like a window into my world when I work with athletes, is to help them figure that out and work with that. But yeah, for the ones who are listening who might not be sponsored yet, there is a freedom associated with that, which isn't all that bad. And then so as you start matriculating up this sponsorship world and start gaining attention and getting stuff, dare I say, even getting paid to, I don't want to say run the stuff, but use the stuff and have the stuff and endorse it. There is no free lunch, so to speak. There is a trade-off, and you're definitely, even if it's not a contract involved, I think there's an implicit understanding that, if someone's noticing you and giving you this product to use, that you're representing it in some kind of positive way, that's going to shine a light on it in some way.
Yeah. Well, and so I guess to kind of get started, Chad, did you have anything you wanted to add to that real quick?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh man, sponsorship. Well, we'll get into that, what I think about it and how it worked for me. But I will say this. The reason, I guess everybody's wondering, like, why did I come up and tell you guys, let's get Jay on the horn and do this, is because the diversity he's had to go through to get to the top and be successful at what he does, and then take it back outside of what he was comfortable doing since he was a little kid and getting paid to do, riding his bike on weekends and stuff, and having a family and living in Southern California where it's not cheap, and being able to transition and go into the real world. But what's interesting about Jay is he still is a very big proponent about how he kind of plays in the world of cycling. He still is sponsored. I believe you still have Canyon as a sponsor, and you still endorse Transition. Sorry.
Yeah. Right.
That's the best bike out there, by the way, the Transition. And actually it is, because I looked at the newest one and it's really cool. But he's riding for a company still. He's older. It's not like he's out there racing every weekend. He's you put your leg over a saddle on a BMX bike a couple times over the years. Still ride trails a little bit here and there, but he did, when he first came out with what he did. Jason's written 2 books, and I read them both. Obviously, all of us BMXers read them all, and just because we wanted to know what Jason's all about. And he talked about how at some point you're going to have to make a decision. Do you keep going doing what you are doing to keep the sponsorships that you have? Do you change that direction? And how do you reinvent yourself? And you're going to have to reinvent yourself because of the fact that most of us are just numbers, and we're dealing with multiple different people at the companies. Like myself, when I have actually given Jason a contract, through Shimano. I picked Jason because of his a way of articulating to Japan what we're looking for in a race group. And plus, Jason did take it on the chin a couple times because he was willing to test and race at the highest level with product that probably wasn't designed at that point to be used at that level.
We were figuring things out. We literally
were figuring it out on some of the biggest, baddest tracks in the United States. And And I'm like, you just got to do it, man. He's like, man, I don't know. I mean, what if you break a crank off or something and you crash, your career's, could be over. And so we did a lot of that. So I think more so just the complexity of what goes into sponsorship. I think Jason has the most well-rounded bit from it actually being an athlete and all of a sudden being on the backside helping athletes transition into life or whatever, or just keep going, right? So,
well, let's start with this: is like how and when to ask for support. Like if they don't come to you, when is the right time? I mean, some people think, there's a lot of people think you shouldn't ask until you have a championship or you've won a lot under your belt, and then there's other people that think, maybe you're more marketable in the beginning based on, I don't know, anything from your social media presence or whatever. But I think it's what's your take on that first and foremost, Jay?
It's interesting. So there's a performance piece, and then clearly there's we'll just call it exposure piece, which can be brought upon by performance, but also you could be, not a competition athlete and just get the social media, the exposure and create a lot of value that way. But I think if you're going to ask for something, you better have some kind of numbers to point to, whether that's performance and or exposure. Hopefully you have both. But when I mean numbers to point to, I mean numbers to point to, right? So now granted, so for instance, I'll put it in bicycle terms. I can approach it behooves me to possibly approach a bike shop if I'm doing well regionally within my state or that region. It might behoove me to approach the factory or the manufacturer if I'm actually traveling and starting to make finals, or actually consistently consistently making finals and place nationally, because then that's like, there's an appropriate level. So just kind of understanding that there's levels involved in this and where you are. And then even then just understanding, okay, well, what do I get, or what am I going to give is probably the bigger question. Because I think when a lot of athletes approach a sponsorship, they're thinking about what they can get. And I was that kid too. I had an older brother that raced, and he was really good. And he happened to have a factory sponsorship. So I saw that. And so I was the benefactor of hand-me-downs, but I saw that. But I'm pretty sure if I didn't see that, I would be just another kid, not only just asking for stickers, but I want this, I want that, goggles, frame grips, and all that other kind of stuff. But I think what I'm seeing nowadays, and I think it's actually pretty consistent with a lot of sports, is a lot of people are looking for the contract before anything's even done.
Yeah.
And then don't even get me started on parents, but my kid's gonna be a champion. My kid's gonna be the next fill in the blank. And they're looking for all this, this support. I think that's because, and this is held true throughout, I guess, my whole professional racing careers, there is status associated with sponsorship too. So that's the other thing. So it's not even that it's about the free stuff or even the check, but being affiliated with a brand that has some kind of cachet, or the cool brand, whatever that might be, that means something. And humans, we like to look over the other person's fence and see how green that grass is. So we like to say that we are sponsored by X so and so, and Chad can attest to this. We meet every time. Yeah, I'm going to say every time we meet a person who raced BMX, whether it was for 2 years, 3 years, or 10 years, or once, generally speaking, they talk about how they rode for so-and-so. Chad, having actually working in the industry and being a factory sponsor, we know the people in the magazines. We know the people who make the magazines. You did not ride for those people, but people want that affiliation, right? So they want to be associated with, something that's good, something that's famous, something that's known. So there's a piece of that. But But when to ask is have numbers. Make sure you have some numbers to back up, whatever it is. So maybe you are looking for something regional, or maybe you're looking for something national, but well, who are you nationally? Why, who are you? And not only that, who are you reaching that I'm not already reaching through the other people that I sponsor, or the other ways that I sponsor? And then there's this whole other level of it, which is like storytelling, because the truth is, I don't know that. I mean, because I had a few non-endemic sponsors such as Adidas or Spy. I was even getting cans of Red Bull sent to my house in 1997. People didn't even know what that was. But those companies were reaching people. I mean, it's Adidas, right? Like everyone knew that what Adidas was. They didn't need a bike racer. But I was part of a larger story that Adidas was trying to sell that fit in.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Chad actually was an Adidas rider too. So it's kind of understanding those pieces, and it's more than just getting free stuff.
Yeah, and it's kind of hard for Sean and I to talk as far as from a performance level. But we have sponsors of this program, and we feel extremely humbled and blessed that we have them. But most of those we had already had prior relationships with. We were already using those products. Sean knows what I'm talking about. I mean, we were buying Fiocchi before this podcast was even a dream or a thought. I had a Kohler before we even dreamed of buying or starting this podcast. So we kind of had those relationships were built and in line. And then when we started doing this podcast and we gained enough traction, they felt it was time to come on board, and we've been very blessed. Some of them went with us from the start, but even the ones that had to go away because of budget reasons or whatever, we're still using those same products. And that's I think a lot of people miss the boat on that. We have the SCTP Nationals, which is a Scholastic Clay Target program. And Sean, you can attest for this. I mean, there's kids running up and down through the vendors row. They'll do anything for a hat and a barrel sticker. I mean, I'll shoot for anybody, and it's like kind of missing the boat there. There's more to it than that. So, what about that, Dr. J? Did you build relationships with these companies before they came on board, or did they come at you because of your results?
I would say, because you brought up the kids, I probably built relationships right. I kind of grew up in the sport, just like I'm sure a lot of kids are growing up in the sport, and you walk around the pit areas and you want your free stuff. I wouldn't consider it a sponsorship. It's just like, I got a free hat from so-and-so, because that's just fun to do. It's almost like trick-or-treating. But you're creating these relationships. And that's a huge part of it, because not only that, you'll be surprised who may come out of the woodwork to help you out.
Yeah.
And I mean help you out.
Yeah.
Not just sponsor you. Because even if you're, there's a whole thing, there's a whole economy to this thing, right? And sometimes the economy is good, and sometimes it's not so good, or sometimes your economy is not so good, even when it is, right? So you'll be surprised how that works. But I always like to tell people, you want to know. Well, I always used to say this: I'm going to be here regardless, right? So if my athlete can honestly say that about themselves, I'm not going anywhere. Because there's also companies that are fly by night too. They come in and they go. They come in and they go. And then so the question is, can you be a staple in your own sport? Can you be a blue chip of sorts? That way you have some leverage. And I don't mean leverage as in getting over on somebody. I mean leverage is just as in, so if that person who's new coming in the sport, they actually know who you are, what you stand for, what kind of athlete or what kind of shooter you are, what your vibe is, all of that before, so that they kind of know what they're getting. So you can be your own best filter for some of these relationships. But yeah, relationships are always key, whether it's in sponsorship or business. And then again, these industries, I don't care what industry it is, they're all small. Even if they're billion dollar industries, they're small. You don't think at car racing, it's the same people that are switching companies and switching stickers every other year. You don't think at motorcycles, the same things. Like, there's some people that stay at companies for years, but then they also move around. You can even look out on the street, car design. Why do you think the Chrysler 300 looks like a Rolls Royce? Why do you think some of the Kias look like BMWs? Well, because they hired the BMW designer. Who designed the Rolls. So these industries are small. So if you have relationships that are good, just based on, hey, we had some burgers after the event, or hey, we went and got a beer together, just shot the stuff around, what life's like and their traffic patterns in their town and how your car broke down the other day or whatever. A lot of that stuff seems benign, but the truth is those relationships matter. And then people get to know you as a person. I had one of the best competitors. He's a Hall of Fame guy. His name's Randy Stumphauser. We call him Stumpy, but he said something, and it was so true, but it's something to the effect of, like sponsors, people ultimately don't really pay you for, it might seem like they pay you for what you do, but it's really they paying you for who you are. Right. So Michael Jordan won a lot of games, but was that all he really did? Like, Michael Jordan represented so much more than just, I'm going to go win these championships. Yes, he did that, but you also knew what he was about. You knew his ethic. There was like a aura around him that was Michael Jordan, right? Just touching him was like, okay, that's worth a lot of money. I touched his shoulder. Let me get some of that. Right.
Yeah.
So, but that comes from relationships, right? That comes from all those touches. And so if you talk to, and I'm sure you have in your sport, I'm sure there's people you talk to, it's like, okay, yeah, he's got that eye of the tiger, or she's got that way about her that's just, you can just see it in them, whatever it is. But there's that there are those relationships there, and then that makes people extend themselves for you, especially if it's a healthy relationship.
Right.
Well, Dr. J, let me ask you a question here, because we get a lot of input from our listeners. Some of them are shooters, some of them are parents of like youth shooters. So we get a lot of questions based on, well, Johnny's doing really well, or Susie's doing really well. How do we get them in touch with some of these companies? And I think there's really kind of a really big different way you approach sponsorships when you're an adult, like, me, Chad, Jason, and we're going to maybe seek a sponsorship because of our accomplishments, maybe not, versus, a parent advocating for a youth. I mean, do you get much into the youth side of things? And do you have any advice for parents that are maybe looking to try to help their kids out with a leg up?
Yeah. So I work with kids. I generally like to, kind of like that 14 years old and up is my preference. But I've been teammates with kids who are factory sponsored. And it's an interesting one, because essentially, if they are that good, you're essentially talking about child stars. It's kind of like that. They're just that good. And, why wouldn't you want Johnny or Susie who, shoots like an adult representing your products? Like, oh my gosh. That said, those are the anomalies, right? Those are kind of those are the diamonds in the rough. My kids are freakishly athletic, but I also know that unless they really want it, and unless it's their choice, that no matter what I say to somebody, and I'm connected, like it's their responsibility to like, whatever sport they're into, do their thing. But even then, I wouldn't dare go say they're the next, pick your famous sports person. So with kids, I'm probably a little bit different in that I still want kids to be kids. I still want it to be whatever it is, to be fun. Of course, if they're in competition, the natural things of hard work and learning how to take your hits and learning how to be a good winner and loser, all that stuff comes up naturally. But I do know if it ain't fun, generally speaking, the kid's not going to want to do it for too long. Because I've also seen a bunch of kids in my sport get burnt out at 15 or 16 when they get their driver's license. and they're over it, and the parents are overbearing, and they feel like they're doing it for their parents, and the parents get mad when they don't do this, and the parent, like their whole existence is about how I do at this race or this tournament, because then dad or mom will be happy if I do well. And that's just a crappy way to grow up. Meanwhile, it seems like, again, why do you want your child to be sponsored? I remember my dad telling me, because I wanted to be sponsored, but I wanted the affiliation. I wanted to be part of a team. I wanted, candidly, I want to be part of the cool kids because that's what it looked like. And I wanted to be them. But my dad was like, you don't need that. I mean, he was really tight-lipped about any money he made or how much he made or how much he didn't make. But he was like, if you want to race and I see that you're working at it, like practicing, riding your rollers and, diligent about it, we'll go race. So I couldn't comprehend it then, but oh my gosh, I was so grateful for that, because then it happened a little bit more organically and naturally. And I had ownership as a kid of my sport. And so I guess my advice to parents would be to let the kids have ownership of their sport, and and then your job is to help guide them through them being an 8-year-old or 10-year-old or 13-year-old or 16-year-old that goes through 8, 10, 13, and 16-year-old stuff as they're going through the sport. Now, if sponsorship comes up, of course, you want to make sure your kid's protected. You want to make sure the kid's not being exploited or just, used in some funny kind of weird way. But that would be like the same as if you were your kid wanted to go have a spend the night or go on a weekend trip to so-and-so. You're going to go check those people out. I would hope. You're going to check who are you traveling with? Do they have a license? Do these people drink too much? Are they, what do they clean? What's their kitchen sink look like? Are they a mess? Are they what kind of people are you going out with? And so it's the same thing with sponsorship. So with the parents, it's, allow that sport to be theirs, allow the kids to have fun, and then, teach them appropriate lessons as they're coming up through it. But if it's about the parent, red flag. If it's about do this and make me happy, I mean, obviously parents are happy when their kids do well, but they need to see that you want the kid to see that you're happy, you're proud of them because of their effort, not necessarily just because they won. Right. So getting into a little bit of the psych stuff, apologies in advance, but yeah, making sure it's the kid's sport is theirs. And then with the sponsorship, it's like, yeah, be the parent is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the agent. And I know it can, but if we see the Tiger Woods stories, we see the Serena Williams stories, again, anomaly. Right. And honestly, like I can't say that their childhood was that great. Truth be told, like millions of dollars in the bank is awesome. It's awesome. However, what if Serena or Tiger just became, good golfer, good tennis player who had normal jobs at the age of 25? Would that be so bad? I mean, really?
Yeah.
Would that be so bad?
Not at all.
Yeah.
Well, Chad, why don't you, because you and I have talked a lot about this, and I know you have a lot of experience, based on other sports, just like I do. There's different tiers, there's different levels of sponsorship, and sometimes, being sponsored doesn't mean that you're on the pro team or you have a full ride sponsorship. Talk about that for a second, Chad.
Yeah, I mean, and you'll get different opinions from actually other sponsored athletes too, right? So when I got into this sport, I came from being full factory, making some money, racing. I worked at, working at Shimano. I was in charge of, $20-30 million contracts across the board with all cycling disciplines. I was signing contracts with Lance Armstrong, people like Jason in the BMX world, teams, individuals. We were getting into the free ride scene where a lot of individual stuff was being exploited at the time through videos, like Krusty Demons of Dirt with the motocross stuff. Remember back in the day, where it stopped being the team racing stuff and started being kind of the grungy single rider. Let's, flip off the top of a building. And even in BMX, it started going that way. And for the longest time, that was just the grungy lower end guys that weren't making a lot of money. And all of a sudden it flipped where they're making just as much or more than the top guys, the racer guys or whatever. And it started, you could see the segments starting to split. With that being said, when you have that much money to spend on sponsorship, you still have a soundboard that you have to follow, from SIC, which is Japan for me. They only give you so much to spend, and you got so many years or even a time frame that you have to spend it in. And you're trying to squeeze out, as a marketing manager, squeeze out the most exposure you can. And for me, Facebook was just coming along, and the online presence and the stuff that is like pretty much front and center page now. Everybody's got a YouTube page. Everybody's got this. Everybody's got that nowadays. And so, now it's even harder in some cases from a marketing standpoint to decide who you're going to sponsor. And you really want somebody, but and I'll go backwards a little bit and talk about the parents. You got Johnny Joe that can shoot a gazillion straight in trap or skeet, but he's got a ding dong for a parent. A lot of times when I was signing contracts, I wasn't signing contracts with the kid. I was signing contracts with the parent. And when you sign a contract with the parent, you're not sponsoring the kid, you're sponsoring the parent.
Yeah.
And it was ugly at times. And Jason and I, they're towards the end of our careers, because we pretty much got out of it at the same time. It was pro teams only. Our program through Haro Racing went to pro riders only. And a lot of that was because that was the only people getting coverage on any type of platforms that were out there. And the kids were just not getting covered. They didn't have the YouTubes yet. They didn't have all that stuff. They did, but it wasn't really there yet.
Right.
And our game changed. The sport changed. ABA, which is at the time the sanctions, now USA BMX. You could make a lot of money as a team if you had a team, and those teams, you always picked riders based on how many people were in their class. So I was always hired because my age group was very big as an amateur, and I got national number one because of that, because it was all based on points, like racing with anything else. And pros, they need the points, but it's about titles at the end of the year and how much money they can make during the year. For us, it's like we need to win every weekend for the team card, so our team could make that 20, 30 grand or whatever it was back in the day when it was really big. And that started drying up. And when that started going, the team started changing, the coverage started changing, and we were like, okay, this needs to. I even had to change as a marketing guy of who I was going to give stuff to. When that happens, I'm dealing with a different demographic of people that cost more. And so when you're spreading stuff out, you have those different levels, and you might pay one guy bonuses, and he could make as much as the next guy that's getting paid a salary if he does his job right, and that was the bet. The other guys, you're paying on a straight salary because you're paying for what they already did, right? Like, they did an awesome job last year. I want to keep them on board. I remember paying Jason, bonuses, and because that's all I could afford one year. And then we also, towards the end of his career, were paying him because he was helping develop some products. So he became more useful in different ways. And so I think there's multiple levels. Obviously, free product, you get something, they just give it to you and you just have to ride it. Nowadays they're going to say, put a hashtag, or, always tag us in all your posts and all this stuff. I don't think this platform we're doing tonight is about the guide on how to do sponsorship. And this is where you probably need to do some research, or call Dr. J. He can walk you through it, or holler at me at some shoot. But we did this for a living. I mean, we've done it as athletes base, and we've done it from in the industry base. So you got the free stuff, and then you got free stuff with something that comes along with it. It might be, we're going to reimburse you for something, your shoot fees, whatever it is. You can stay with us, at a shoot. We're going to get an Airbnb, and everybody's going, you can come on in. Like Jason said, with kids, if somebody knows somebody and you're part of a team, you might have like a team parent that is taking the kids around to the trap shoots or the skeet shoots, because that's what they do. And they're learning how to win. They're learning how to work as a team. Even though they're shooting individual, they're doing all that stuff. And that sponsorship could go to the team, and it could go to the individual. And that's why this game can go two ways. You can have the team sponsorship. I'm the Oklahoma Shooters, and they're some affiliated trap team, and they get 100 cases of ammo for the whole team for the year. So they spread it. The team spreads it out however they decide to spread it out, whether it's based on performance or everybody gets a little bit of the pie. And then the individual breakouts. And I think that can range all the way from, being considered part of a pro staff because, from a marketing standpoint, you're just trying to get your name out there. So you're using that sponsorship as almost like some help, to get you out, your name out there, to get you in front of other sponsors. Cause you're like, oh, that guy's, for example, me, I had some issues with some comp and chokes back in the day when I first started. The guy was so cool on the phone, and of course I'm going to run their product because I believe in it. And then I started building the relationships, and to the point where I haven't paid for a choke since 2008. So,
Yeah,
and they're one of my bigger sponsors. So, but they helped me catapult myself to other sponsors because the other sponsor was like, oh, they took a chance on him, and that's a good company.
Mm-hmm.
I like what they're doing with Chad. Let's talk to him, see what he's doing. And, and of course, then, there's level. That's where the levels lie, all the way up to getting paid millions and billions of dollars that we make as for riding cycling, bicycles or shooting a gun, which actually doesn't happen. But I might as well say that we make millions and billions. So,
well, the other thing too, that I think a lot of people don't understand is a sponsorship is actually supposed to hinge in favor of the sponsor, not the sponsored. A prime example of this, Sean and I just released a podcast last Thursday with Rhino Chokes talking about the new Alien series chokes that they came out with. And I ran into the guys at Rhino over the weekend. They were set up there at the Florida State Championship. And, Scott Dixon and his daughter Jillian told me that, the podcast came out on Thursday, all day Thursday and Friday, their phones blew up with sales, and they were so thankful. And I'm like, no, that's what it's supposed to do, right? A return on your investment.
Mm-hmm.
You invested in us, and we're supposed to bring you sales. And I think a lot of people kind of have some animosity towards Sean and I because we're not the top tier, top echelon shooters. But look what we just did for that company. There's not a lot of shooters that say, oh, well, I put his name on the back of my vest and I'm going to create those kind of sales and those kind of phone calls. That doesn't happen. So, I mean, and I'm not bragging. Trust me, we're extremely humbled by our sponsors, but people need to understand that if they give you 1,000, you need to make them 10,000. If, whatever that is, if they give you a certain amount of product, you need to be doing tenfold at minimum for what they're doing for you in order to make sure they're getting a return on it. I mean, look, sponsorship's all about marketing, right, Dr. J?
Yeah. So I wouldn't necessarily relate that to product. I think it might be obviously they want it to move the needle. I guess it's whoever's writing the check, and that includes giving you the stuff if it's no money involved. Basically, are you providing what that other person values? Right. And so then you can be aligned. So because the truth is, it could just be, hey, you got X amount of media and that's all we need. Our marketing team will take it from there and create blah, blah, blah with it. Or it could literally mean, hey, we gave you this stuff and we didn't sell that much more because but it's having that conversation up front about expectations too. It's fun. Chad mentioned, getting something and having the right hashtags. It's interesting. So I did ride for Canyon for a little bit, but I ride for Transition now. And Canyon was very much like, X amount of posts, hashtags. There was a certain, but Transition's like, you don't need to mention us. Like, well, I mean, they're not saying don't, but they're just saying you don't need to. Why? Right. Because they have a different culture in the company. They Canyon's very, it's a German brand, it's clean, it's performance based, it's it's very, straight lines and straight at you. And Transition's more like, hey, party in the woods. Yeah, they race and the bikes are great, but they're not about that necessarily. They appreciate the affiliation. They want it to look more organic. So there's all those. So just being aware of those things and what the right fit is. And truth be told, I mean, I'm not young, but even when I went to Canyon was a bit of a thing because people are like, they're like, I could see that. But then when I went back to Transition, I was like, yeah, that's a better fit. Not only, I mean, but outside people can see it too. It's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And it was just because of how I carry myself, who they are as a brand, everything down to like, I have, my kind of colors and my brand is blue, they're blue, just all those little things line up. Do I move the needle? Maybe regionally. Do I help them tell their story? Yes. And maintain consistency? Yes. And by the way, that's a real return on investment, right? Because if what you're doing is going this way and they're going this way, that's not a return, whether it's by sales or by media impressions or by just, those different touches. So I would say make sure as best one can that you understand what the deliverables are as the athlete.
So here's a good question. Lisa Tony came into the chat, and this is a great question because this comes up. I know it's come up in BMX before, and when we were racing full time, but it actually comes up amongst a lot of pros in this game because of how they got their sponsors. There is a big just like a it's almost like a culture that in this game from the guys that have been around for a while that you should never ask for a sponsorship. You should never approach anybody because if you're good enough and your gun's doing the talking or you're racing and winning enough that they're going to come to you and not you to them. And I used to believe in that. And this is my opinion, and we'll get Dr. J's here. My opinion is when I first started shooting and stuff, I was told by all the top guys, I was hanging out with Zach and Anthony and Brad Kiz, like, look, dude, you got to just win. And I was winning in all the other classes. I came up very quickly. I turned masters very quickly, about a year and a half. And I did it through shooting big events only. And I was winning a lot and not getting a lot of support. And I couldn't figure out why. I'm looking over here at Anthony, and he's got a Fiocchi sponsorship at the time or a Bretta sponsorship. And these guys are winning at the HOA level, which is high overall, the overall event. And then, I'm winning the lower classes. And I kind of kept my mouth shut. And one thing I did differently is because of my experience in Shimano building contracts and, doing a ton of where I had to stand up in front of Japanese and do PowerPoints and stuff like that, is I built my own marketing structure, platform, whatever you want to call it. And I started putting it out there, not expecting to get sponsored because of who I was and where I lived. I live in California. Not, at the time, it was big bad California that shoots. Zach came out of here. I wanted to follow the footsteps of the best, but I did that to get my name out there. And I put it to the people at the time and these companies that mattered. And then again, formed relationships with them. And I had some really good relationships with some, and I sold a lot of product with one of them to the point where I to this day, I'm a little shocked I never got put on the pro team because of how many of what I sold for them, which is what they wanted me to do. But at the time when I said, okay, I'm here, why am I not, what more can we do? Let's go. Let's get this done. I'm winning, and I'm doing pretty good, and they're like, you got to win and you got to win a lot, and you're not doing that. And I immediately got tossed aside and I was a number. So do you think, Dr. J, with your experience, what we've gone through, who you're dealing with now, do you think that still holds true, that you should just not say anything and they'll come to you if they want you to sponsor? Or do you think with the way social media is and everybody has a platform, and doing that one step better by putting yourself in front of people, regardless of what may or may not be what people think the reason why you should be sponsored or not, which we'll get into that next about who I am and why I got sponsored and why other people didn't. But what do you say to that?
I would say the good enough where people come to you, usually it's because you're standing out so much. Because you are like a Jordan, or you are like, the phenom, the Tiger Woods type. Of course, people are going to come to you, but that's, that's one person. But I always like to incorporate human factors, right? So there's usually a psychology to everything. So what I mean by human factors, you ever get on an airplane and somehow you just catch eyes with a person, and then you just end up seeing that person all the way to Kentucky or all the way to the rental car line in Ohio, right? The truth is you probably taken that same trip with like 5 or 10 other people who left from your home city. But because you happen to see that one person, there's a thing in your brain called the reticular activating system. You keep seeing it again. Just like if you're shopping for a certain car, like you're going to keep seeing that car over and over again. You're shopping for refrigerators, you're going to see Kenmore if that's what you're looking at. You're going to just notice it everywhere, even in places you wouldn't look for it. That's human factors. So people get used to what they get used to. People actually make bad decisions because they get used to stuff. So you could be the person that's winning or coming up through the ranks, and someone might say something, but at the end of the day, if that check is on auto pay, and if they're used to hanging out in their certain pit area and traveling with their certain people and looking a certain direction, you might actually be doing really well in the rankings, or even with your posting or follows or likes or all that other stuff. And the people who are writing the checks might not be paying attention, or might not see it because they're conditioned to look a certain direction at a certain way. So to the extent that you can get the attention or forge or make a relationship, then guess what? Now you're that person they see from the time you got in 32E all the way to the rental car counter back to the airport on Monday morning after the event. And good point of that is one of my good friends who raced, he lost his sponsor. He was sponsored by the GT Bikes at the time, which was like the best, most lucrative sponsor. He was winning, but he wasn't as social, let's just say, as I might have been. And you would think, and he was going for the title, everything. He lost his sponsorship purely because of money reasons, but he was the guy winning and he lost his sponsorship. So, and then it took him a while to gain traction and find another sponsor. Actually, it really slowed his career. It was Greg Romero, right? And he had more trouble, and he had trouble finding a sponsor, even though he was winning and people should go up to him and do that. But I do think it was because at the time he was relatively isolated. He was he just didn't take the time to make some of the extra relationships because he was so focused on the racing. And that's not a blaming thing. It's just human factors. It's just what it was. Meanwhile, you had a guy who, another horror rider, his teammate towards the end, Derek, who, had the relationships, had the website when websites were starting to be a thing. And bam, he wasn't even a top pro, but he was getting paid like a top pro. Yeah. He was creating coverage, but he was also putting himself in front of the sponsors in a way that was positive, that looked factory, that all that other stuff. And he ended up backing it up for sure. But I remember at that time so that's a good example, Chad, to kind of speak to that, that question that Tony Lisi is asking. If you're good enough, shouldn't they, or should you not come to them? We have a saying in psychology. It's don't should on yourself.
I like it. I like it.
Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And the thing is, if they should have, then why didn't they? Right? Because there's a lot of stuff that we should do that we don't do as humans ourselves. So it doesn't hurt to shake a few hands, and high five some people, and just kind of understand the industry that you're in a little bit, just a little bit. I'm not saying be someone that you're not, but I am saying, it's worth it to put yourself in front of people. And I had a 15-year pro career, but I can count on one hand how many calls I got for sponsorship.
Yeah, I think Mitch would make a good comment here just a minute ago. It says, sounds like getting sponsored is a combination of skill, influence, following, and one's ability to network with other shooters and companies. Do you guys agree with that?
That sounds very reasonable, Mitch.
Yeah, I think
it sounds very reasonable.
I mean, it's one thing to be the phenom, right? You can be the top of the game, and you're the person that's winning all the time, and that's easy because anybody can pick that person out.
Right.
But there's other factors that come to play, I think, for most sponsors. They probably look at, are you connecting with the company? Are you using their product religiously? Are you talking to other people about it? Are you helping them? Are you doing stuff on social media? There's just so many other avenues that might make sense or be of value to a company that I think that a lot of people tend to only focus on the performance side, the athletic side of winning and taking home championships and things like that. Yes, that's a big part of it, but I think there's just as many people on the other end of the spectrum that are just good ambassadors to the sport, and maybe they're just good social people, good people that go out there and are well known. Chad's a good example of that. I mean, in our sport, he's very well known. He's definitely a go-getter. He represents his brands really well. You see him all over social media, and there's plenty of other high-end shooters in our sport. You see them, you talk to them, but I don't think they do near as good of a job as what Chad does. He's one of the better ones I've seen out there.
Well, there's guys out there that, and this is just the algorithm that I was using because I was working, I used my skills at my job to help me kind of go ahead of maybe other people or getting that sponsorship, was the fact that I knew I wasn't going to be the best. Not right. I'm still striving to that day to be the best. Right. And I know, Jason, when you were racing and I were racing, I remember when we both did well at one race, and I won and you won, and we were just like, hell yeah. We did it and that took a lot. I mean, we were racing week in and week out and not winning and having some pretty shitty weekends, really. Money wasn't coming in, wasn't making the mains, or just crashing out, just bummed out, all that stuff. But what I found for myself is, look, if I can't be the next Brandon Powell, okay, let's just use the guy that's winning everything. If I can't be the next Brandon Powell, then I want to be able to get in there. And how can I be one of the guys? And one of the guys means to me is I need to get out there and be active. And there's times where I've taken breaks from social media, and I get a lot of texts from sponsors like, everything okay? We haven't seen him make a post in a while. It's like, no, I just took a break, and which leads me into a question, Jason. I know in our sport, and it's only happened a couple times, where guys they're so hell bent on getting sponsorship that they'll take absolutely anything, and the performance of whatever they say yes to is affected, whether it's the equipment or what have you. I tend to try to stick with the guys that I know the performance of the product is. There's lots of good companies out there. Let's just say that straight out, guys. Look, anybody that's listening to this, there are a ton of good companies out there. There's a ton of good gun companies. I shoot for Blaser, I shoot for Fiocchi, but Krieghoff and Winchester and all these other brands are out there. Kohler, whether you shoot off an Atlas trap or a Promatic or whatever it is, Kicks Chokes or Rhino or whatever it is. There's so many good sponsors that may or may not fit with you. And I've seen guys take the money and they've been really miserable because of what they're, you know, it's kind of like the question, are you sure you want to be sponsored? You sure you want to be sponsored by Shimano? You want to get in bed with me where I'm going to be up your butt telling you that I need certain things from you? Japan's asking for certain things. You want to ride that product that may not have been QC tested, and your leg's going to be the QC tester, you know? And so what do you say to that, Jay, about that, like, you know, about not just taking it and running, or what do you think about all that?
Yeah, I think so. It's funny because I remember I did switch sponsorships up, and I thought it's not going to be so bad. And I just remember calling them saying thank you, but if I can get out of my contract sooner rather than later, that'd be great. I appreciate it. It's just not working out for me. Here's the product back, because I hated the way it made my bike ride. It just, none of it was right. The way they marketed it just didn't fit.
Hold on a second. You said one thing that was really cool right there. You said you gave it back, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, guys, if you get sponsored by somebody and you don't like the product, be a gentleman or a lady and ask to have it, send it back.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times they'll say, I mean, at least in my case, they were like, keep it, do whatever, where they give it.
It's part of the budget. But yeah. I mean, don't be the person that's like, we find out on social media later that, you know, that you don't like the product and you sold it. You know, it's like,
well, actually, it's funny. Even with remember those? I went up to Shimano and you guys did that heat molded shoe to my foot.
Yep.
I gave that back, and I went with the other shoe just because I like the other one better. For me, I like the other one better.
I was bummed, but that's part of the give and take.
Yeah. Anyways, we can discuss pedal and shoes later, but so yes, there is a window when you're an athlete, and because it doesn't always last forever. So there is a bit of a take the money and run and get while the getting's good, all that other stuff. However, within that window, you want to align yourself with companies that are a good fit. You know, how are they going to promote you? How are you going to promote them? What kind of people are there? Do they have a revolving door, or have people kind of been there for a while? Is it an aspirational brand, or maybe it is a new company, and you know you're excited about what they're doing, and maybe you're the type of person that's known to take some chances, and maybe that's why it's a good fit. I don't know, but the point is the fit does matter. If rule of thumb is if it's a product that is how should I put this? If it's not something that's going to affect performance, and if it's an extra, why not? I would still say does it still fit?
It's kind of like Jinko jeans sponsor back in the day.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Getting all the big. Hey, so here's one for you. This is I think we answered the question, but Jay Rambo, you and I grew up in even I did, and I think Jason, you did too, Dr. J, when we were all racing. Maybe Sean in the
wait a minute. Do I have to get a lawyer on the phone to answer
No,
this?
no.
Okay,
so when you guys were not factory racers, because I know Sean, Jason, you had some motocross sponsors. Sean, you've done some stuff in the mud bogging area, and Jason, you and I have had tons of different sponsors. When we weren't sponsored, I remember it was a big deal to wear jeans and a white long sleeve shirt, keep things clean, race around the track. And as you got sponsored, things changed. Nowadays, it seems like you almost can't tell a factory rider from a non-factory rider. And the reason why I'm bringing this up, because in our game, you see a lot of brand guys that they're so in love with the brand of shotgun they bought or whatever they got, like Blazer or Krieghoff or Kohler or whatever, that they're over at the store when they come to a shoot where they have their event and they buy everything that says Kohler or everything that says Bioki or Blazer, just insert the name there. And do you think that makes sponsorship difficult for more people because of the fact that the company knows that it's like, hey, these guys got to buy this stuff to be able to go boom or to be able to ride around the track, and they're willing to promote our stuff, and they're doing it for free? What do you think about that?
Good question. I think so. Shimano's a good example, right? Because you made some crucial components that you just had to have, like a chain. And I know there's like original equipment spec and all this other stuff involved in that, but that's a good question. But if you're a bike brand, there's a lot of brands to choose from, right? So where I would thought you were going with it is would I promote somebody that's kind of promoting it for me for free anyway? That's where I was going with it in my head.
No, yeah, I get that.
But I do think it comes back to alignment. And I do think there is something about a brand also just taking without contributing. And I think people are sensitive to that. And I would imagine in shooting, it's like it's felt like when that company is involved in the sport in an intimate way versus just like it's just another investment,
Right.
And so I think, but again, that's like a storytelling thing, that's a relationship thing, there's all of that stuff involved in it. So I think, I don't know, it's kind of that's a great question, but I think it might be product dependent probably, and also brand dependent too on what that thing is.
Well, that's the unique thing about our sport is really, and I know, forgive me, I don't know BMX, but I know like in motocross, there were certain things you had to have in order for the bike to hold up or to be competitive or whatever. Sporting clays, you can get away with a less expensive shotgun. You can get away with less expensive shells. I really don't think it's like product dependent and for performance. So that's a little bit of a unique thing about sporting clays. I think probably one of the biggest problems I see with sponsorship, and Dr. J, you can touch on this, is the sense of entitlement. I don't know if BMX, I know you probably have amateur ranks just like motocross did. And of course we have it in our sport with the SCTP. And I hear, well, my son's a national champion. No, your son's an amateur national champion. And the companies, sporting clays is such a small community. We think it's big, but in lieu of other sports, it's actually kind of small. And everybody knows everybody. And, your son or daughter is a national champion. You know what? To win the SCTP Nationals, that's a big deal. It really is. But the problem in our sport is they don't want to sponsor. I shouldn't say they and generalize everybody, but there's a lot of companies that don't want to sponsor a kid because a lot of times we see them go away after college. Mom and dad cut the purse strings. Mom and dad aren't paying for shoots and shells and all that stuff. And they kind of go away because they can't afford it. But then we see them come back in their 30s and their 40s.
When they got a job.
Right.
A career.
When they got a job and they can afford to shoot, right? So companies really look hard at the youth shooting. Who's going to be around? I can name on one hand some amateurs that I know of that have made a good career in sporting clays and moved forward. I just said one hand.
Yeah.
There's 3,800 kids that were competing at the SCTP Nationals last year. So
that's awesome.
5 out of 3,800 are moving on. Right?
That sounds about right, though.
Yeah. So
I mean, that's right. I mean, hello,
back in our days, it was 8 amateurs made it into the pro ranks every year, and it was usually
and then we could spit out the back. Like that sounds about right. I mean,
Sean Alley was a football star in high school. Hey, Sean, did you have any NFL teams call you?
No.
Okay, I'm checking.
Yeah, well,
you know what I'm saying, and we have that that sense of entitlement,
Yeah. Well, it's I don't know. Part of it's entitlement, and I think it's also just kind of the times we're in, because you literally can have everything you want at the press of a button, whether you pay for it or not. So there's that. But the other piece is, I think people really underestimate. So if you watch Supercross, this is a great example. You watch and the guy getting lapped in the main event, and you'll just hear some person, in the stands, he sucks. It's like, you have no idea how good that lapped rider is in the main event,
No
how
idea.
good they are. You have, you have zero idea. Even with professional sports, pick your team that just had the crappiest record. Oh, they suck. They're this. Oh, blah, blah. You got one job to do. Blah, blah, blah. You have no idea how good that bench warmer is on the crappiest professional team is. I'll tell you how good a professional is. They are so good that a 50-year-old can go to the track and probably be, aside from the existing professionals who train there, the fastest person at the track right now.
Agreed.
At least the first turn. Maybe not around. But my point is, and I'm not saying that to pat myself on the back, that's just the level of elite athletics or elite anything. So people underestimate that. So and by the way, God bless you if you're national champion or state champion or school champion. Like, hopefully everyone gets to feel what it's like to truly win something. Seriously.
Yeah.
That said, it doesn't guarantee the check. And like I said earlier, are you going to be here or not? And that's the truth.
Mitch just brought up another question, which is actually pretty cool because this kind of goes in with what you just said, Jay. Do you guys think there's an eagerness to get sponsored in sporting clays because of how expensive the sport is? Now, from a racing standpoint, we would get a family on average. We did a algorithm back in the day, old school. They'd last about 4 years. They would pretty much hawk their house, go on tour. We would see them out on the races for maybe a full year to 2 years, and then they would start fading to where, unless they got sponsored, and where somebody was, because when we got sponsored in the day, everything was paid for. Our travel was paid for, everything. That's not, just so y'all know, if we're not all sponsored shooters are not getting everything paid for.
Right.
You might be getting a salary on something that you're using or doing, but bonuses, but you're not getting reimbursed or not reimbursed. You're not getting paid to go do it necessarily.
Chad, if you had to guess, Chad, how many top level pros in sporting clays do you think are actually getting their entry fees paid for?
I only know, it depends on how you look at how they're getting paid. If they're getting just a salary check, then I would say there's probably.
No, I'm talking just entry fees. Like,
yeah. Well,
how
again,
many do you think are getting entry fees?
If you're getting paid and that's to do your whole job, then I would say maybe not that many. But as far as strictly getting your entry fees paid, I don't know too many that are. And if they are, they're going to be very secret about it because of the fact that there's not a lot of it going around.
Right.
Just for example, Jay, and I don't know if Dr. J, if you know this or not, but they did a study in our game, and I'm sponsored by Fiocchi ammunition, which is a commodity that is being used, so we don't get to keep it. It goes away. And the boys here are also sponsored for their show for Fiocchi ammunition. 1% of all shooters are sponsored by ammunition companies. And that's because, for the thing I said earlier, it's, some sponsors or some companies like this, they know you got to go buy the ammo to be able to go boom.
It's
so
disposable.
they're not, it's disposable. They're not going to necessarily just be giving it out to everybody. So to get those type of sponsorships, one, I don't think anybody listening or hearing us knows how hard it is to get that and how privileged any of us that have that sponsorship as being like, it's not cheap. So back to his question, do you think that's there's an eagerness to get sponsored because of expense? And I know BMX is expensive.
Totally.
And,
you want, to subsidize this thing, to subsidize my habit. Yes. Yes, you love this thing, you do this thing, you're passionate about it. It costs money. It sure would be nice for some of this stuff to be paid for. Yeah. That totally goes, again, that's a real human factor, right?
Right.
How can I get this thing covered, because this is really pricey.
Right. And
And
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you say, finish what you're saying, because then
I mean, if you think about any of these endeavors, they're terrible decisions. It's a terrible decision. Like, I mean, like being a professional athlete, generally speaking, terrible decision. Being an artist, for like, generally speaking, right? Because there's work at the post office. There's work at, like I know when my refrigerator breaks every other year, my electrician, the appliance person is booked. Like, hello, that's a way better gig, at least more consistent. Not sexy, but consistent. Anyways, my point is, you're entering, once you are like entering into anything competitive that might even offer money to get, it sounds about right that it would be 1% are getting free ammunition. It sounds about right that only, out of those 3,800 kids, that very small percentage of people are making it through to like, that is how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
So if you're going to sign up for this thing and go for it, recognize that, on the other side of the rainbow, it could be a pot of gold, but it also could be, all right, that
would you say
make it.
That's about what another reason why we wanted you here too, and I really pushed for you, is because the USA BMX and their statistics are the same, very close to being the same as the statistics for the clay shooting community. The amount of people that race, the amount of turnover, the expense, just XYZ. There's a lot to it that just continues to be parallels. And, Mitch asked, he goes, it costs him about $85 to shoot 100 targets as a brand new shooter. It's going to take me years to even shoot enough shells to even be able to hit championship level targets. My answer to that is how bad you want it. With all what we just talked about, being not the smartest plan to go out and be a professional, because my wife has always said that to me. It's like, why couldn't you pick golf or something that made a hell of a lot more
cheap.
money? Yeah, and it's not cheap, right? I would say, do some of the guys, I think the reason why they're so on top still to this day, that were the best, 10, 15 years ago, the Anthony Matarices and stuff like that, is because of the expense. They were coming up into the game when they had the clays were cheaper, everything was cheaper. They could burn, thousands of targets a week and be a quarter of what we're paying now to shoot. And so they got years and years above all of us, and I've even said it about myself. Only reason why I've been able to catch up or be even relevant in the game at my level is because, I live in Southern California where I can shoot all year round. So I'm catching up that way.
Difference.
But yeah, I think in racing it's the same way. I mean, it's my dog's going nuts today. Sorry. So anyways, I think it just comes back to how bad you want it. And, you got to make the sacrifice. And I think that's a great lead in Jason Rambo is, are you prepared to sacrifice for whatever that is that you want to get to?
Yeah. No, that's you're exactly right. I mean, you and I have talked about it numerous times, Chad. I mean, it is a big sacrifice. I mean, the only thing that's keeping guys like Sean and I from being, the only thing that keeps any of us from being at the top level is time and money. I mean, and you can't lean on a sponsor to get you there. You just can't. You have to get there. A lot of times you have to get there in order to get the sponsor. So, guys, we are running a little long. I want to jump to Sean and I had a few more questions for Dr. J before we let you guys go. Sean, you want to go ahead?
Yeah. So we all know there are certain people in the industry, whatever sport that there is, they'll go chase whatever shiny pennies in front of them, right? So you've got people that have reputations for jumping ship, going from brand to brand, sponsor to sponsor. I mean, I have to think that most of the sponsors are going to start getting their names. I mean, can you talk a little bit about why you don't want to do that? Why it's a little bit better to be a loyal user, or, once you have a sponsor that's taking care of you, even if it's maybe not the sponsor that you want. I think it's so important that if you get any kind of level of sponsorship, to prove your loyalty, show your gratitude towards what they're doing, and not be the person that just goes over where the grass is greener every 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's a tough one because sometimes the sponsor goes with the relationship, not the brand. So I know certain people in the industry where it looked like the riders were going from brand to brand, but they weren't. They were going with the guy who was writing the check, who might have went from brand to brand. Does that make sense? So there's that. But okay. I hear what you're saying. If you're just like, oh, well, this is the cool ammo now, or this is the cool gun now, or whatever, rifle now, and then like you want to just go to that because that's the next cool thing, that can no pun, shoot you in the foot. That can work against you, because what'll happen is you just burn through people, and there's only so many people, and then you're kind of forced to look for the next best thing or next new thing, because you're relying on someone else's ignorance to support you. But people get hip to that. But again, my question goes back to, are you going anywhere, right? And I made a decision in my pro career, probably halfway through it, like, wait, I'm going to be here. Whether the sponsors are or not, I'm going to be here. So, usually people will invest in you if you're willing to invest in yourself. And usually people who are willing to invest in themselves in that way generally aren't jumping ship too much, unless it's because unless it's the right decision to make a move.
Well, and we definitely don't want to sound like Debbie Downer and discourage people from trying to get sponsorships, but
no, for sure.
I mean, anybody can be sponsored. Anybody is, I guess you could say, quote unquote, sponsorable. Is that a word?
Yeah.
But it's like Shad said, what are you willing to sacrifice to get there? Sometimes you have to sacrifice to get something. And,
what are you going to give to get? What are you going to give to get?
Right. Just so what are you willing to do to get some free chokes? Is it just about getting free chokes, or do you truly want to represent that brand? Do you know the product and you really want to be an ambassador for that company? And then I think staying with it, like Sean just said, for the long game, and being authentic, right? And sticking with it.
And also being prepared to do some things that may not be the comfortable thing to do for those sponsors. Like, you got to test some ammo, and you got to shoot it in a competition to see how it works, or shoot this gun or whatever it is. And that's a big deal, right? So, just be prepared. When you do decide to go down this road, talk to somebody that's been sponsored before. You're going to get a bazillion different answers of what you should and shouldn't do. Don't talk to these guys, let them talk to you, whatever it is, or go have a relationship with them. But in the reality of things, have a good relationship with the people that sponsor you, so they know who you are. Be present when they are doing team things, when they're having things happen at shoots, when we have vendors, like Blazers at a couple events. Make sure you go there. And that means a lot to the teams, especially the staff of these companies. They like to see who they sponsor and know who the rider is, or the shooter, like in Jay's world in the riding. Just make sure you represent. You're not out there. If you have a problem with the product, you're not posting it all over social media that it's horrible or it blew up on you or whatever it is. You have to kind of, keep it at wraps, talk to the right, get the things fixed, however they need to be fixed, and because nothing's perfect, right? I mean, I've had bikes break while I was racing in half, and Jason's hiding me. I was like, don't let anybody see the bike being broken in half. It's like, dude, I just jumped a 40-foot set of doubles and I didn't make it, and it happens. So, shells aren't going off or whatever. It's not that they suck or the company, you would never shoot that shell. It happens. It's a machine building parts and things that, it just is what it is. But if you have a good relationship with the companies, they'll work with you for so many things and they'll help you when you need it the most. And that's a real important thing to me anyway, is like being there for them as much as they're being there for you.
Yeah.
Well, and that's one of the things that it's kind of easy for Sean and I, because we had previous relationships with these companies. But one of the things you need to do, and Dr. J, I want to hear your comments on this, is you need to spend some time, when you're at these shoots, if you do get a sponsor, you need to spend some time at the booth, like Chad was just saying. For us, meaning Sean and I, it's easy because we've already built relationships with these people. So we want to go hang out with them anyway, but they want to see you there. They want, and Sean and I with the podcast, people are always wanting to come up and say hi. And we love that. We're both people. You're people. But we love that. We love seeing the people, but the sponsors want to see you do that at their booth. And so, especially like nationals where they're all there, we try to spend, today, let's go over and we're going to spend half a day with Fiocchi and half a day with Atlas. And then tomorrow we're going to go spend half a day with Kohler and we try to divide our time amongst them. The sponsors, they love that. They want to see you there, but they want to see you interacting with other people that are coming in there. And they want all their sponsored people to do that, right?
Yeah. I actually learned this more than ever. And maybe I'm just fortunate that my personality was such that it allowed for it, but positive touch points. So even now, like I know I'm not for everybody. I could be a bit much. I could be a bit talky. Like I get it as a psychologist, but if someone calls and they're inquiring about coaching with me or working with me, I'm going to do my best to help them get what they think they want or need, knowing that it might not be me. But guess what? If I can help that person, point them closer to wherever they need to go, or maybe we work together, that's a positive touch point and it comes back around. Same thing when you're at an event, positive touch point. I mean, one of the number one pros, and he was dominant, Jackal, John Purse, he wasn't so positive touch point with the other athletes, but with the crowd and his sponsor. I mean, he was there helping them put out the tents. He was there helping them clean up the tents. True story. I mean, he even helped me work on my bike once, and we raced each other. He crashed me just as soon as helped me work on my bike, but as far as but that goes a long way to watch, the number one pro world champion, and he's there, cleaning up the tents and picking up trash around the pit area. And, he always kept a pen in his pocket in case a kid came up. Like, that was cool. And that goes a long way to where, maybe he loses that sponsor, or maybe he has a bad season and gets hurt, but I'm pretty sure he can make a phone call here and there and probably cobble something together, which he did, when the economy takes a tank, or when the company he ride for got sold and they want to part it out, or whatever it might be, to where you can find something else. So if you can create as much positive touch points, and I'm not being someone you're not, but just creating positive touch points in the way that's authentic to you, Yeah. So maybe you're not a trash picker upper or someone who wants to, put a tent out, but maybe you're really good with explaining the product. Maybe you're really good at giving feedback about the product. Maybe you're really good at helping the Johnny or Susie 10 or 11-year-old with some pointers, or how to be less nervous, or whatever it is. Whatever positive touch points you can have, take advantage of it.
Absolutely. Well, Sean, you're being awful quiet over there.
Well, I was just waiting my turn, trying not to talk over everybody. Yeah, we've gone kind of long on this whole episode, and I think we could keep talking it into the ground.
That's my fault. I apologize.
No, not at all.
No, it's usually my fault.
Yeah, we usually just point fingers at Chad. That's basically
what I'm
down to.
Well,
But-
look, guys, the reason why we wanted to do this and we talked about it so much is because Jason and I are constantly talking about it every day, and it is always an issue with us, and we see it all the time. So it was good to have Dr. J, because you have a perspective from an athlete and outside the industry now, and from different ways, because you help athletes too. And I just want people to understand that it's an awesome thing to be sponsored, but it's hard, So just be prepared for what you ask for. That's what I always say.
Sean, what were you about to get into?
Well, what I was going to say was, basically, again, Jason and I aren't sponsored for our shooting ability. Okay. It's we can flap our gums and we can be kind of a social presence for our sponsors. They see the value in that. So for everybody else that's listening to this, maybe you have a son or daughter that's kind of coming up through the ranks and they're impressive. They're doing well. The thing of it is, have hope that one day somebody will see the value in them and they may offer them some help. It might only be a discount on buying ammo. It may only be, a partial something or other, or a part or a piece or whatever, not a whole gun. But, be appreciative of that, because a lot of people don't get it. Again, our sport is very small and we get asked all the time, how can I get in touch with these people? How can I work on getting a sponsorship for my son or my daughter or myself or whatever? Again, Jason and I, we've had a lot of luck and we've had a lot of good feedback from doing the podcast all these years for our sport. And we kind of, worked our way into that. In my opinion, it's not something that a lot of people would do or could do. But as far as being a good shooter, there's a lot of them out there. And I think both Chad and Dr. Jason explained, it's not just being good at something or being the best at something that warrants you to have a relationship and have a sponsor that's going to take care of you. There's a lot more to it. There's, your attitude, your presence on social media. What's your general, demeanor? I mean, are you a nice, easygoing person, or are you somebody that, crawls away in a corner and can't stand to be around people? Because again, these are all things that sponsors are going to take into consideration before they ever make a deal with you or make an agreement to help you out. So, do a lot of thinking. I know the biggest thing we get hit with his parents and the youth shooters. And again, God bless them. Everybody needs some help. It's an expensive sport. I hear it from parents all the time, but just realize it's not unlike, a lot of other sports. You have to be at the very top tier to be recognized for your achievements, or you have to have some kind of a unique ability or unique persona that makes people want to kind of follow you, either like on social media or even out and about in the field. So don't get discouraged if it doesn't come immediately. Just kind of keep working at it, build those relationships, and make sure that people that you are wanting to sponsor you know who you are and that you use their products and respect them for what they offer.
Hear, hear.
Well, Dr. Jason, we have a lot of things we want to get into on the psychology side. So hopefully we can get with you and schedule a podcast in the near future. I know that is absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, and Chad can attest to this, it is absolutely the biggest topic in sporting clays is the mental game. So love to pick your brain, no pun intended. We'd love to have you back on for a podcast, and let's try and get that on the book soon. I know people
anytime.
are anxious to hear it. Rad, Chad, buddy, thank you so much. Appreciate you putting this together and helping us with this. And there's going to be a lot of questions coming in, Chad. If it's something you can answer, we'll get you back on, and maybe we'll get Dr. Jason back on. But we appreciate both of you being with us, and we look forward to the next upcoming episode with both of you. So.
Well, I just say good luck to everybody out there that's in Shooterland that, is looking at sponsorship, because I know it's a question that comes up all the time. I get it all the time. And I'm here out in the West Coast. It's like, how did you get Fiocchi? How did you get this? Because I do have a lot of sponsors. I look like a NASCAR vest, and I try to put a lot of stuff out there in social media, and I don't win all the time. I win locally. I'm pretty good regionally. I've had some good success in the past, but I haven't been in terms of longevity. I haven't been doing it that long. So, I came on quick and I got a lot of help quick. And I did it in a different way, and I'm not saying it's the right way or the wrong way to do it. I think there's multiple ways to get sponsored and to do this game. Matter of fact, there's 4 people on here that I know for a fact that got sponsored differently for the things that they do, right? And it's not easy, guys. I mean, you guys just think we're just getting champagne poured all over us, and there's ammo going out our butt, and I get a free barrel every week on my gun, dude. I'm taking care of my stuff just as much as the guy that purchased his K80 or his Blazer down the street. And yes, I've gotten help with shells, but I have to, it's part of my budget, so I have to watch how much I shoot. It's real easy to shoot more than I need to, and but look, I will tell you this. Jason knows me very well. I've been doing this for a long time, but I came from a different sport that I probably should have turned pro at a lot younger age, but I was too chicken to do it. So I stayed amateur, and it worked out for me to do that. But I got a lot of grief for it because I didn't turn pro when it was at its heyday, because I was scared to race those guys. I turned later. And I left that sport wanting to be competitive at something else. And I think a lot of shooterland people want to do that too. They're competitive. They don't want to golf anymore. They want to do something this is a great game to do it. You can do it at at all different ages, really. We've had people on here that are in their 80s and 90s that shoot. So I think the sponsorship stuff is cool. I love being sponsored. It is part of my ego or my aura or whatever, but I also realize I'm a number. Jason's always helped me with that one, that we have to reinvent ourselves. And I work in an industry where I've had to fire people and hire people. And one day I won't be, we're sitting here, and I have no problem saying one day I won't be on Fiocchi, and one day I won't be shooting for Blazer. I hope I can roll with them all the way until I stop firing a shotgun, but it is what it is. I'll still be here. As many times as I wanted to quit, I want to be in it just as bad. So just keep pushing. And, if you want it bad enough, you can have it. I came in this game not knowing anything about shooting. So, and look where I'm at. So, and look where you guys are at. And look at Jay's on a shooting podcast and not a bicycle podcast, right? Or a psychologist podcast. You're not in front of Shimano talking to people or whatever. So
there's only one thing missing here, Chad.
What's that?
We got to take Dr. J shooting.
I know, and
we do.
Dr. J, Jamie Stapp, Olympic medalist, gold medalist, and world champion in BMX, called me the other day, and he's looking to go shoot too. So maybe we can get a bunch of BMX to do it.
Yeah.
So
we need to make that happen. So Sean Alley, that being said, what do we tell everybody every week?
Well, take somebody new shooting, get them out there on the course, put a gun in their hand, watch them break their first target, watch that smile develop. And like I say, this sport sells itself. You go out there and you have a lot of fun. And yeah, definitely. Chad's doing it all right there.
That's like NASCAR. Look, switch
That's
out.
right. That's right.
Switch your hats back and forth. So
right.
Well, this has been awesome, guys. Thank you so much. And Sean Alley, until next week, my friend.
Can't wait to see you all back here on the Dead Pair podcast.
Dead pair, dead pair, dead pair, dead pair.